And now let's look at Japan, while we still can, apparently. Because the way they're going, the country might disappear. That's what an aide of the Japanese Prime Minister said. She said Japan is disappearing because of its population crisis. The country has announced a record low number of births in 2022. It was just half the number of deaths last year. Japan's population shrunk by about 8 lakh people, 800,000. It's both shrinking and aging. The country is heading towards an economic catastrophe. The government plans major policy initiatives. Their budget to revive the population is more than their record-high defense budget, and that should tell you something about how critical the situation is. Here's a report.
Japan's population is declining. But that's not the news. It's the rate at which it's declining that's making headlines. Japan recently published data showing that the births in 2022 were less than 800,000. It's a level Japan wasn't supposed to reach till 2030. And the births amounted to half of the deaths last year. This means Japan's population shrunk by about 800,000. It has caused an aide to the Japanese Prime Minister to declare that the country may disappear. In recent weeks, the population crisis has been on everyone's mind. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said that the time to address the crisis was now or never. He has vowed to double the expenditure on children and families. A new government agency to focus on the crisis will be set up in April. First, let's look at the numbers. The births last year fell below 800,000. This is the lowest since data collection started in 1899. For context, births in the 1970s were over 2 million. The fertility rate has fallen to 1.3, far below the 2.1 needed for a stable population. Both the birth rate and the population have been declining for years now. Researchers say the population could fall to as low as 53 million by the end of the century. Why is this happening? Firstly, raising a child is expensive, especially in Japan, where childcare costs have increased, but the economy has mostly been stagnant since the early 1990s. Wages have gone down in Japan in real terms. Then there's urbanization. Cities have limited space and a lack of childcare support. Another factor is Japan's rejection of immigrants. Countries like Canada and Australia encourage immigration to bolster their workforce. But Japan has historically been averse to migrants. It has struck a blow to Japan's demography. But why is Japan's population crisis so acute? After all, neighboring nations like China and South Korea, and even many Western countries, have low birth rates. China even saw its population decline last year, for the first time since the 1960s. The difference lies in Japan's demography. It is the second oldest nation in the world after tiny Monaco. About 29% of its population is 65 or above. The average age in Japan is about 49, and it keeps increasing. It's this impending demography, an abundance of the old and a dearth of the young, which is poised to destroy Japan's economy. The government's plans so far have been criticized as short-sighted. They involved tax breaks for families or proposals like student loan waivers to working women with children. These policies fail to incentivize having big families outside urban areas. The government has also been called ridiculous, like when a lawmaker recently suggested that the lack of children isn't due to the high cost of living in Japan, but because young people aren't good lovers. He suggested carrying out a survey to determine the citizens' romantic ability. But the lawmaker also hinted that Japan's conservative society, where romance before marriage is taboo, might be a problem. Whatever the reasons, Japan's population situation is dire. Researchers say this decade is crucial in getting Japan back on track. The government needs to focus all its energies into bringing about a baby boom. If not, Japan could be headed to a long grey twilight before the nation disappears.